The 2025 NHL Draft class is already looking incredible with a ton of forwards and D making their marks right before their draft year. And even though the 2024 draft looks pretty solid with players like Macklin and Celebrini, the 2025 draft has some incredible talent that I wanted to talk about today. But just how good is the 2025 draft class? Well, today I'm going to be previewing it with my complete top 10 and a few honorable mentions, going through all of the best players in the class heading into next year. So make sure you watch till the end for all the rankings and all the scouting reports, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey and prospect content just like this as we lead up to the 2024 draft, the 2025 draft, and beyond. Now, if I had to explain this 2025 draft in one word so far, it would be exciting. There's so many guys here that I think have high ceilings, high potential to be impact offensive NHL players, and even the guys outside the top 10 to me could provide some real value. Now, I got three honorable mentions that I wanted to talk about today, three guys that just missed the top 10, but I felt deserved some credit and deserve to be talked about here today. And we're going to start out first, I guess, at number 13 in Sweden with Jacob Ice Wozniak, who is a Swede born in Australia, so we're already starting out with some fun here. You can already see him standing out at 6'3", 179 pounds, and this year he's actually played really well in the Junior 20, getting 22 goals, 49 points in 36 games, and already getting a couple of SHL games as well before his draft year. To me, with him, you could really build a really unique power forward in the future, bringing some great skill, a fantastic shot, and just gets in the right areas to make plays happen. Next up, I guess at number 12, I have Malcolm Spence, who to me is going to be this really interesting, hardworking two-way forward at the next level. Even though I don't see a lot of amazing skill, this is a guy that plays the game so smartly, is able to play and transition incredibly well, and this is a guy that you're just going to want to have on your middle six in the NHL. You can see already with Erie this year, 62 points in 63 games. He's just a great play driver, knows where to be, knows where his teammates are to connect plays and make passes happen. He's just an incredibly smart player and a really hardworking one too, and he's going to be around this range most likely by the time the next draft is over. Next up, the player that just missed the top 10 actually comes in the US NTDP here with Charlie Trethewey, who defensively is a really interesting project. He's one of the younger players in this draft with an August 2007 birth date, but that kind of makes it impressive just how good he is already. At 6'1", 190 pounds, there is some rawness there, I think, with his decision-making and the way he applies himself offensively. There is still so much to like with his goal scoring, the way he's able to use his skating, which is incredible, by the way, especially his edge work and his speed in his own zone. It is absolutely fascinating to watch. He is a guy that is going to be an incredible project to look after, and in terms of potential, you could really get a lot out of as a dual threat, two-way guy that just leads in all three zones. Now, before we get in the top 10, let's first talk about today's sponsor in Sleeper Fantasy. I got 6 different picks here tonight, to putting $10 down to win $104, and this one is pretty nuts, so bear with me. First, we got Cole Sillinger, less than 0.5 points, and you can see in terms of the game log, he hasn't had a point in his last 5. I also got Jacob Chychrun, less than 0.5 points versus Boston. Kind of the same thing. He's also gone a little bit cold, and I think over his last 7 games has 0 points. Then I got Ryan Donato, more than 1.5 shots on goal. He has just been kind of nasty recently for Seattle, and you can see the shots department, he has been really consistent in that category, only getting less than 1.5 in I think 1 game over his last 10. I then got Brad Marchand, less than 2.5 shots on goal, and he's kind of gone a little bit cold in the shot department. He's gotten more than 2 a couple of times over the last 10, but mostly around that 2 range, getting less than that. Then I got Evgeny Malkin, less than 0.5 goals. This really just to add some value onto the picks. He's not much of a goal scorer, obviously, but did get 1 versus the Sharks, but just over his last 10 hasn't been that active. And then I got Morgan Riley, less than 2.5 shots on goal. He's also a player that's kind of been inconsistent in that regard, but I think versus Philly, I just have a feeling that Riley's going to go a little bit cold. But those are my picks, and we'll see how they go. If you want to make your own NHL and sports picks every day, Sleeper is the way to go. Just go in the description, click on the link, and sign up using promo code GRAV on your first deposit, and you can get up to a $500 match. If you put $100 down, you'll get 100 free bucks with Sleeper. One heck of a deal there, and we'll also be announcing the winner of the jersey giveaway soon, so stay tuned for that. Now let's get into the top 10 here for the 2025 draft, and next up, I got William Moore, who is a really interesting player in this year's class, playing with the US NTDP, 6'2", 161 pounds already as a 16-year-old. And you can see what he's been able to do this year. Pretty solid statistics in the U17 roster, 38 points in 42 games, and really good production as well in the World Hockey Championship for the US. But this is a guy that I think, even though he has some rawness with his physicality, is a guy that brings some great traits to the game. He's so solid in terms of the puck movement, in terms of attacking defenders. He's so good at being along the boards, working off his opponents, and just getting into those good areas, getting in front of the slot, working on tips, getting good shooting opportunities. He's just a really smart, dynamic player who I think offensively has a really high ceiling, and once that maturity and physicality really gets boosted in his draft year, you're going to see more really jump up a lot of draft boards. Next up, we go on to number 9, and I got Cole Reshny out of the Victoria Royals, and you can see at 5'9", 161 pounds, I don't really have too much of a problem with smaller players at this stage, mostly because, again, he's a 16-year-old. There's still room to grow, and I could absolutely see Reshny growing maybe a couple inches or so, and if he does, he's going to be an absolute monster, man. You can see with Victoria this year on a awful team. He has 57 points in 59 games. He's really been tasked as a 16-year-old to run their offense, and he's done a pretty good job at that. To me, Reshny, even though he's a smaller player, he has a fantastic motor. He's a guy that really works well in small spaces, and I think that's really going to allow him, even with that smaller stature, to thrive at the pro level. But I love the creativity. I love the way he's able to find his teammates as well as his playmaking ability, and this is a guy that I think if he grows a few inches, by the time next year, could be inside a lot of people's top 8, maybe even top 6. Now going inside the top 8 spot and going onto the first D inside the top 10, I got Slovak D Luka Radivojevic, who is a really interesting player at 5'10", 161 pounds. He is a smaller D, and even though we could see maybe some improvements in his height, I don't think it would be absolutely substantial. He's probably going to be at most around that 5'11", 6 foot range. And to me, there are some problems. There are some problems with explosivity with his skating and how he uses it. I do think he has a lack of speed, at least with his skating, that could be a problem with his size, but I think he does still defend very well. He's incredibly smart in his own end, and the way he's able to transition the puck, the way he's able to pass up to his opponents, coming up around the blue line, he's a player that has some really good ability there, and you can see he's gotten some responsibility playing in the SHL playoffs, was great for Slovakia at the World Juniors, winning a spot and getting a pretty good role there too, and to me, I think there's a pretty good floor there for a solid dual threat and puck moving defensive D, but I do have some worries if that skating isn't able to come a long way, that he might be a little bit limited at the next level. Now at number 7, let's go on to one of the most impressive players so far in this draft class in Porter Martone, who the Mississauga Steelheads has been really solid over the past couple of years. And this year, in 58 games, 32 goals already, 36 assists for 68 points. He's one of the older players in this class, which means that he's got a lot more hype already, but that frame is already NHL ready at 6'3", 170 pounds. And even though I have some issues with his consistency and some of his play off the puck, this is a guy that can impose himself physically, finish checks, be good along the wall, work off of his opponents really well physically, but I also love the shot, the way he's able to come into the slot and really come out of nowhere to bring an imposing presence. And even though I don't think there's anything incredibly flashy with his skill, he gets the job done in that aspect, and I could see becoming a really solid second line power forward type that makes your team very happy. Now at number 6, let's go on to the absolute enigma that is Roger McQueen at 6'5", 190 pounds, one of the best names, the best name in this draft class, let's be real. But you can see with Brandon what he's been able to do so far. In 53 games, he has 51 points, and it's already been pretty incredible for them. And to me, for Roger McQueen, it is going to be fascinating to see the player that he becomes. For his size, which honestly, I could see him even being taller than that, maybe even 6'6". He's a player that has incredible skills, and the way he's able to manipulate the puck, the way he's able to control play and control pace is incredible. He's great around the net. He's great at deceiving opponents and really using his size in an incredible way to protect pucks, to keep play going. This is a guy that could be an incredible player, and if he's able to become more of a consistent product, use that offensive skill set even more, could be one of the best players in this class, and potentially even a top 5 one at that. And yes, because I know you guys are all asking, Roger McQueen is a pretty good skater, he goes pretty fast, and he is speed. Now we get inside the top 5 and go on to, in my opinion, the best defenseman of the 2025 draft so far, and it's by far out of the UNTDP, Logan Hensler, a Badger commit who has been incredible this season for the U18 team, and honestly, their best defenseman personally. He's a guy that just brings so much maturity to the game. His skating is brilliant. This is a guy that is so physically imposing already, and it's just a guy that will shut down defensively, will be able to make plays up the rush, isn't a slouch whatsoever in terms of the skill set offensively, and just has so much potential as this dual threat guy that at the very least could become a fantastic, maybe number 2 defensive player in the future. Though again, I think the offense has a lot of untapped potential that we could see with the Badgers next year. Now you'll notice that this draft is pretty good for centermen as well. William Moore, Cole Reshney. I think Roger McQueen could absolutely be a centerman. Next up at number 4, though, I got out of the MHL, Ivan Ryabkin, who is looking really interesting and isn't your prototypical selfish, all-offensive skill player. He's a guy that I think is pretty well-rounded. But you can see in the MHL already, 44 games, 58 points, as well as over a point per game in the MHL playoffs at 16 years old. Pretty impressive to be able to do that, and it's numbers similar to Demidov, similar to Michkov, and all these impressive players over the years. With Ryabkin, he's a player that isn't too selfish either. Works off his teammates incredibly well, especially in transition, is a great give-and-go player, has a really solid shot, but it's the way he's able to use his body too. He's a pretty well-rounded player physically already, and to me, that's a pretty good sign. He's a guy that I could absolutely see being a center on the next level, and I really like Ryabkin's game so far. But now let's go on to the top 3, and next up, let's go on to potentially another center at the NHL level in Michael Misa of the Saginaw Spirit, who of course got exceptional status and has played pretty well since then. And you can see this year with Saginaw in 64 games has 71 points. And even though he's not the best prospect to me, he's not that far behind. I would say there are some issues. He's not going to be providing unreal, exceptional talent personally, but he's a guy that is a brilliant skater, is so effortless with his skating, with his edge work and the ability to power up the ice. And I also like the ability to make plays smartly, the way that he's able to work off his teammates, to drive play well. He's a really smart skater and a really smart player too. And I think that's going to be the biggest attributes going into the future. I would say he's a lot more of that kind of Shane Wright level than a Connor Bedard level per se, but he's still a player you're going to want to have on your team as a smart, offensive, top 6 center in the future. I think the main question will be, does he have enough pure talent to be a first-line dynamic center in the future? But I could see him being maybe in the lower tier of first-line centers if he goes to the right team. But now we got to go into number 2, and my early favorite player of the 2025 draft, I mean, I think I have him higher than most, is actually going to be Anton Frondell out of Sweden. And a pretty young player in this draft class, having a May birth date, still 16 years old, but 6 foot, 179 pounds already. And even though he doesn't have Roger McQueen type of frame, he's a player that is incredibly strong, especially with his skating, the way he's able to put momentum on his lower half and just power through opponents already. It is pretty special to watch. And in the junior 20 as well as the Allsvenskan, he's played pretty well there too, having a great scoring touch, driving the net. He's just a player that is incredibly smart with the way he plays, and I think the offensive ceiling is going to get a lot of recognition as well. This is a guy that could be a great goal scorer, but just a great dual threat offensive guy, can run a power play, can do so much for you, but it's with that unbelievable skating ability where it really all comes through. And to me, this is one of the premier players in this draft class, and also could be a centerman. I know it's a broken record, but this draft is just unreal at sea. But next up, we have to go on to number 1, and right now, the best prospect in the 2025 NHL Draft class. And next up, I just have to go with James Hagens out of the US NTDP, quickly asserting himself as the number 1 prospect in this class. He has just been so incredibly impressive and just continues to get better and better. You can see at the U18 squad this year, in 46 games, he has 67 points. Already on the U18 roster, is looking like one of the best players out there, if not the best. And he is such a shifty, such a creative, such a brilliant playmaker. His skating is blissful, it's crafty, it's so deceptive, and he's a guy that's able to just work in deep in the offensive zone. Also play pretty well in the corners too. This isn't going to be a guy that slouches physically, and the consistency, the work ethic with Hagens is also exceptional. To me, that's really what goes above and beyond with Hagens. This is not just the skill, it's not just the skating, it's the way he asserts himself, it's the way he carries himself on every single shift, and that consistency to me is a big part of the skilled package you're already getting. I don't know how good of a first overall pick he is, but he is going to be immediately one of the most talented players once he steps into the NHL, and so much fun to watch. But those are my top 10, top 13 rankings in the 2025 NHL Draft. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you guys think of this 2025 draft so far? How are you feeling on it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Who are your favorites so far? And who would you want your team to select in next year's draft? Let us know all your thoughts down below. Of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already, if you enjoyed today's content and want to see more just like it. And also click on this card for all of my hockey prospects talk right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great hockey day, and goodbye.